Opening slide graphic text title. Session 2, Work Conditions, Interests and Contributions. An Introduction to Discovery, Part 2. What is Discovery? With Milton Tyree. Logos, Belonging Matters and TalksThatMatter.net.
So what is discovery? It is a common sense process that's not commonly practiced. It's one of those things. There are a lot of things in our work that people go, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. Why wouldn't you do that? But because it's not the way we traditionally have done things, it's not as commonly practiced as one might think. So here's the basic idea. It's getting to know people and helping people get to know themselves before developing plans. Start with the person. It's spending time with people and learning who is this person instead of testing and evaluating people. So discovery didn't come around till 1988 or so. And Mark died in 1982. But Mark Gold hated standardized testing and IQ tests and all of that, the whole bundle of it. And the reason I mention that is this is a really nice extension of Mark's legacy, that we're not interested in testing people or comparing people with other people. We're interested in knowing people and finding out what they have to contribute. Learning about people's interests related to work, conditions that need to be in place for them to be at their best, and contributions that they have to offer businesses. It's what prepares us for job development, people who do the work that I do and like what Pat does. What are personal characteristics for a good job? This is our iceberg analogy. This is the tip of the iceberg, which is what a lot of people know about somebody with a disability. And a lot of times, a lot of decisions have been made based on the tip of the iceberg. So what Discovery strives to do is to dig much deeper, to know more. Who is this person really? Starting with the person, not the job. Finding ways to promote genuine involvement, opportunities for contribution, personal growth, rather than, somebody said this earlier this morning, rather than keeping people busy and happy. Testing preconceived notions. Everybody knows, those everybody knows statements, the conventional wisdom things, everybody knows that Tim can't. So Discovery challenges that, saying, well, are there times when Tim can or would want to? And what are the conditions under which that would happen? Thinking in questions, beginning with the familiar and moving toward novel. Here's some additional things to keep in mind. This is very much centered on Mark's legacy, which was the kind of relationship to have with people with intellectual disabilities. And it's always balanced. So we're always striving for a balanced, walking together kind of relationship. We all benefit from balanced relationships, but it's another one of these things, especially people benefit from that who've been so much on the controlled end of relationships for so long. Another one of Mark's things that, insights that carries forward in Discovery is interests. He would always talk about learning about people's intrinsic interests. What kinds of things do people do without anybody asking them to do them? And all this stuff, Mark, I had just finished studying all this operant conditioning stuff that was part of my college education. B.F. Skinner, we read Walden too, all of that kind of stuff. And then next year I learn about Mark. And I think, wow, this is different. This is very different in terms of relationships and all. And Mark said, all this reinforcement stuff, find out things people want to learn and teach them that. And you see, so that connects real nicely with discovery in terms of learning about people's interests, things people would be motivated to learn, so we don't need things artificial. Avoiding the readiness myth, avoiding testing. Human beings have vastly more growth potential than is realized. And as we've said, opportunities for contribution feed the human spirit, taken from the developmental model. I like this, this graphic. It's kind of an M.C. Escher kind of a thing, you know, a trick drawing, where one side it looks like there are 3 boards, and the other side it looks like there are 4 boards, and people are arguing about it. But you know, this happens with people. 2 different people can have very different levels of expectation and belief about what's possible for somebody. And they both can be right in terms of what ends up happening with that person. When you change the way you look at things or people, the things or people you look at can change. So discovery, instead of testing, instead of asking what do you want to do, instead of placing people in a readiness program or a predetermined job. So the 3 primary ways of getting information are just pretty straightforward. I mean, you just ask the person to spend time with them and things that they do all the time. So if I'm getting started with somebody in discovery, I say, can you tell me like what a typical day looks like? What kinds of things? Do you have chores around the house that you like doing? What are they? You know? What kinds of responsibilities do you do that nobody asks you to do? What are the things you're really good at doing at home or in the community? You know, do you belong to a faith community? Do you belong to a youth group there? Whatever, you know, like what does your life look like? And what are kinds of things that you think would tell me about you, where I could spend time with you there to learn more about things you enjoy and things you're good at doing. And then you try some new activities based on what you're learning. That's novel things. So I'm going to give you an example here. I get to mentor people in discovery. It's a 20-week process, and we work together with a learning partner who the human service person is working with around developing a vocational profile. And Audra was one person I recently was mentoring, and she said, this happened very much by accident, but I was out with Ben, her learning partner, and she said, twice this has happened. We've gone into businesses and they have these claw machines. You all have seen these things before. You put money in them. Your kids always want to put money in them, and you put the claw and it doesn't pick anything up and you lose 50 cents, whatever, right? And she said, here's the thing. I've seen Ben play 2 of these now, and he always gets what he's looking to get. He gets stuff out of the claw machine. Twice she'd seen him do it. And she said, I watched him study somebody else playing it, and then he goes up and he says, I'm going to get that. And he'll get it. She said, so we're always talking about translation and discovery. You see somebody have a skill in one area and you think, how does that relate to something else? She said, how does that translate? And I said, I don't know. We're going to have to think about that. And then later she had an idea. She said, what about drones? I said, that's kind of interesting. That's a marketable task, isn't it? And so she talked to Ben, and his mom and dad said, has Ben, Ben says he's never flown a drone before. I wonder if we could try that somehow. And his dad had a drone, and Ben had never flown it. So they went out to a park, and Audra said the first thing they did was the dad demonstrated for her how to fly the drone and asked her to fly it. And she crashed it. But she didn't, it was still good, but she wasn't any good at flying it. But then he did a demonstration for Ben, and sure enough, Ben could fly the drone. You see? Now, that's just a piece of information. It's just a snapshot, but it's kind of interesting, isn't it? And so that's an example of taking an everyday activity and translating it and thinking of a novel activity. What else might I want to learn about this based on what I learned initially? I'll give you some more examples later. All right, and then the other way to get information is interviewing people. And so you always have permission of the person you're interviewing, but you can get a lot of insights from other people. You know, a favorite teacher, somebody in a program who just always has believed in the person who would have ideas and insights, family members, of course. Another person I've been mentoring, Sarah, in Discovery, she took on this idea like a bandit. I mean, she interviewed 15 people and she got really interesting information, people's insights about things her learning partner would be really good at doing and things she wouldn't have come up with by herself. The last thing way of getting discovery, and we say to hold out on this one a bit, is to ask people permission to review relevant records and documents. So why do we say hold this for last, do you reckon? Preconceived ideas, yeah. And a lot of times what's in records is more negative than it is helpful, although it could be both, and it's good to review them. The other thing is we really don't want to ask people when we're first meeting them, can you sign this record release for me? Because that kind of sets the wrong tone for discovery. So while we're getting information in these three very straightforward ways, these are the things we're looking at sorting out: conditions, interest, and contributions. Now I'm going to give you an example of discovery, but I'll define these briefly here. Conditions are things that need to be in place for the person to be at his or her best. Some examples would be things like just the nature of tasks. You know, some people do really well in tasks that are working with things like computer tech kinds of things. A lot of people that I know with intellectual disabilities work really well with tasks that have clear parameters when they're done and not done. And tasks that have a range of correctness, like cleaning, custodial work. Oh, that's another word I said in Sydney. People said, what's custodial work? I said, I was a custodian when I was in college. What's that? It's a janitor or a caretaker. I liked cleaned areas in the, locker rooms and stuff. When I gave the story, my point was that that's really complicated work. You're always making decisions about what kind of cleaner to use, when it's clean enough, what you're going to clean that day because you don't have time to do everything, all the social considerations about cleaning locker rooms of the other gender and all that stuff. It's really complex work. But yet a lot of people think cleaning work is very simple. It's not. I've done it, and so people may fail at cleaning work, and a lot of it could be just the nature of the task. So that kind of goes back to this point. The nature of the tasks is really important to learn about the people. Range of correctness might be fine, but you'll learn that in the process of discovery. Different kinds of features of the setting. Environmental features, some people indoor, outdoor, some people small areas, some people large areas. Some people can only function well in orderly environments. Some people can do fine where it's pretty chaotic. You just get an idea around what's the setting need to be like, environmental features. A lot of people work fine with incandescent lights, but they wouldn't have a really hard time with fluorescent lighting. You learn all that kind of stuff. I bolded this because it's so important. I referenced it earlier, talking about Sam and Keith. This people condition. Everything else can be right, but if the coworkers and supervisors aren't right, that can be a real no-go. It has to be an important people connection. So one of the things I look for is low turnover. Consistent people. If there are coworkers changing every week and supervisors changing, that's going to be hard. Some people work better with people who are a similar age. Some people work better with men, some people work better with women. All of the people considerations. Routines and rituals. Some people do really well with a job. It's the same thing every day. Some people want to mix it up a bit. Like our jobs are, those of us who work in the field, every day is entirely different. Timing, pace, scheduling. Some people work really well at jobs where things have to be done just a certain way, but production, that's not going to be their thing. For a lot of people with intellectual disability, production is not going to be their thing, so you're not looking for a production-oriented job. Things where other characteristics are important. Their learning and support strategies, all of that. And then interests. It's a lot more than asking people what they want to do, because oftentimes people's range of experience is really limited. And it's not just asking people, it's observing. That's going to be true in the story I'm going to tell you in a moment. From what social role valorization theory has taught us, we really want to be thinking especially about interests that are typical for age, gender, and culture that are most highly valued. Given the person's strongest contributions, are there areas of interest that should also be explored? So a lot of times there is. The story I'm going to tell you, there's something of a cross-section, a dovetail of interest and contribution. Often requires exploration, translating what's already known into new possibilities. And then there's contribution, which includes all kinds of things. Skills being an essential one, because people can have personality like Kez, at Harris Scarf. I think her personality probably is a huge contribution there. But people are not going to hire Kez based on her personality, even though that would be a huge contribution. They're also going to want to know about her skills. Does she have credentials that would be helpful? A lot of times people's life experiences are contributions. People who have survived institutionalization, recommendations or connections are contributions, just resources people may have that would be normative to use at work, like a nice camera could be an example, or people's specific knowledge around an area. I was assisting this guy with work once, and everywhere we would drive, he would tell me about all the plants we were passing. He knew the genus and the species, if it was invasive, where it came from. And so somebody who just knows that much about that, where would that be appreciated? And then he would always say to me, "Do you want me to stop talking?" I'd say, "No, it's fascinating." But what that made me think was a lot of people before had said, "Jeff, you need to stop talking about plants so much, but..."
Graphic text, watch next. Session 2, Part 3. Considering possibilities and job planning. Closing slide, graphic text. With thanks to Milton Tyree, Mark Golden Associates, www.markgold.com, livestream, www.beinteractive.com.au. This video was made possible with the support of an Information and Capacity Building grant through the Department of Social Services. Produced by Belonging Matters. Belonging Matters makes every effort to provide accurate and up-to-date material. However, information is subject to change and our materials for reference only. This video was filmed on the land of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. Logos, Belonging Matters, and TalksThatMatter.net.